Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Dance World podcast. Now, yes, I am filming this part on my phone because this is future Chris talking about some mistakes I made for the first episode, like not checking my camera angle, and I cut off the top of my head for the first part of it. It happens. It's whatever, but I wanted to put this out for you guys. I will be putting this out on audio here very soon. So just working through some logistic stuff on that. It will be out on Apple Podcast and Spotify. But this is the first episode, and I'm really excited for you guys to see it. I got the chance to sit down with Rick and Denise Vogt, who are the artistic director and director of Twin Cities Ballet, and they're awesome. I got to dance with them personally, and we answer some questions about how you go from, dancer to company member to teacher, and so on and so forth. And hopefully you can learn from their examples. And this is the first episode. I'm hoping to have more guests. So if you guys have any suggestions for people I should sit down with, topics you would like me to cover, I would love for you to email me at thedanceworldpodcast@gmail.com. I will put it down in the description. I will also have the social media of the guests in the description, so that way you can find them and the shows that they are putting on soon. Here's the first episode. Enjoy. Okay, so today I have the pleasure of talking to Rick and Denise Vogt. They are the artistic director and director of Twin Cities Ballet. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
It's the first podcast, so this is going to be a little bit impromptu. How are you guys doing?
Good.
I've had the pleasure of dancing with you guys and had wonderful years here, and now my sister's dancing for you. Excited to see some of the shows coming up, which we will plug at the end. And I just wanted to talk to you guys about the progression from dancer, like a student dancer, to a company member and beyond, since you guys have gone through the whole process of becoming director and company or artistic director of a company that you own yourself in this wonderful building with heated floors.
Yay.
So first I'd like to start with, where did you start? Where was your beginning in ballet?
Woohoo.
Yeah, you can be first.
I always moved a lot as a child. I was always running. You see the old cine films, and there's Denise. So my mum put me in ballet. I think I was 9, little local class. I did some exams because, I'm from England. So in England you do exams. So I did some exams. It was ISTD, which is kind of more Cicchetti style. And I did really, really well. So then they're like, well, I kind of outgrew that school. So at the age of 11, I actually went to a local ballet school. It was called Harlow Ballet, and it was in Essex, so it's a good 20 minutes from our house. And I trained there until I was like 15, and my teachers told me, you're not right for the Royal Ballet, because I hadn't had enough training. I didn't go on point till I was 13. So they said they knew everyone. My main teacher, Leo Kersley, was one of the founding dancers at the Royal Ballet when it was Sadler's Wells. So he said there's this new studio opening up in London called the London Studio Centre, and we know Biddy, Madame Espinosa. He always knew he knew Fontaine, he knew all their names the way that normal people, friends would say. So I went there. My school was great. I went there one day a week instead of doing Fayed in school, and I took the train. It was a 45-minute train drive, and I took a ballet class in London, and our classes were an hour long. I had never done a port de bras forward. I didn't know half the stuff, and it was amazing. And I think I was the useless, most inept dancer there. But they accepted me, and it was It was really cool. I was there for 3 years. The school, every teacher had been or was a working professional. And we had ballet class every morning, but then we'd have jazz or acting or singing or tap. That was a terrible class. But
I still can't. I have horror stories.
Well, I do too.
About tap.
I have horror stories of the teacher of tap, but that's another podcast. All the teachers there either dancing at the Royal Ballet or they're on the West End, which is England's Broadway. I had a great experience, and then I got a contract to dance with a ballet company in Germany, and then I danced with 3 different ballet companies in Germany, and then I got married to this guy, ended up in America.
Is that where you met?
Yeah, we met in Germany, and came to America, was a pastry chef for a while, always had taught ballet, and then eventually started kind of my own a school within a competition school, and then we decided to bite the bullet and start a school, and also we're running a non-profit, the Twin Cities Ballet, so it's kind of it in a nutshell.
What about you?
Oh, I forgot the first question. How did I start?
How did you start ballet?
I never even saw ballet until I was a junior in high school, and hadn't even thought about it. I was on a ski trip. We were weathered in I think North Platte, Nebraska for 3 days. Couldn't get out. We were in a small private plane on our way to Colorado on a ski trip, and just boredom. But anyway, they had this ballet on TV. And I thought, I've never seen a ballet. Let's watch a ballet. It was Nutcracker, and it was ABT, and it was Mikhail Baryshnikov and Gelsey Kirkland. I didn't know. Anyway, I was just blown away. I just, this whole universe existed, and I didn't know anything about it. And I was like, how do they do that? The athleticism, the strength, even the women on point, and the lifts. I was just so intrigued. And my friend that was with us, he's like, well, you should go to Josephinos. That's the best school. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. And it's like, how do you know this? So his mom was a ballet teacher. Anyway, I just sort of toyed with the idea for a few weeks. And I was like, I think I might try this. I might try ballet. Why not? And or skydiving. There was either one. There was some friends.
So similar.
They wanted to do there's a skydiving club at the U of M. They're like, we should go and do skydiving. So it's like, skydiving, ballet. I don't know. They seemed kind of the same to me. I don't know. I didn't know about either one. So I decided to take ballet, and I did go to Josephinos. 2 or 3 other people, I mentioned it at high school, and they're like, oh yeah, you should go to Josephinos. That's the best school. It's like, everybody knows about ballet except for me. And I'm talking about guys, girls, anybody. They all seem to have this exposure, and I felt so out of the loop. So anyway, I started with an adult beginner class, and the next month I decided to take twice a week, and then they had a work study scholarship where I would clean. And then I just started taking every single class, like every class, the most advanced class, beginning class, adult classes. I just took every single day. I just started taking everything, and I just kept dancing, and I never planned to be a professional. I was just doing this as really fun. You get into a partnering class, the pas de deux class, after like a month, and then now I'm dancing with the most advanced dancers in the school. It's like, this is cool. We're doing fun things. I used to call it my girl lifting class. My grandfather loved that. Anyway, I kind of went through senior year of high school, started dancing with doing little bit parts in shows with a company, and took a year off school thinking, I don't want to I'm tired of school. So I just, not necessarily to dance, but I took a year off and I kept dancing. And then decades later, I went back to school. So anyway, I did finally get the bug, fell in love with it. I went to San Francisco Ballet for a summer, went to Joffrey in New York when they were in New York for a summer. Got offered an apprenticeship with the Washington Ballet in DC. Actually, I had 2 contract offers for paid positions with 2 different companies in very small markets, and I opted to go for the apprenticeship, and that's really the year I just took off. I trained. I was working with the company every day. I took a 2-hour advanced ballet class in the school, even though I was already dancing as an apprentice with the company. So I had company class, rehearsed all day, then took another class, and I spent that whole year. And then that's when I got my first full contract offer. But then I thought about it, and I said, well, my father said, what are you going to do when you're 40? You know, how this isn't a lie. And I said, well, what I don't want to do when I'm 40 is regret and wonder what if. So I said, you know, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it now. And I'm going to just see, and I can always go back to school. And that's what happened. So I danced with Washington Ballet, did Ballet West, Nevada Dance Theater, did some guesting around, and then I ended up going to Germany, West Germany at the time, where I met Denise. And that's how we met. And then I danced professionally until I retired.
Danced professionally and explored theaters.
And explored theaters, yeah.
Yes.
I tended to wander.
Just a little
I
bit.
found some interesting places.
I remember all the stories
theaters.
you would tell in class.
Yeah, we don't
about
want
how
to. I'm
you
not sure.
would go up
I'm
into
not
the
sure we
attic.
want to broadcast those. Not by name.
It's
but
not any
I discovered,
particular theater.
I discovered secret entrances to get into theaters to see things. I discovered places that were up in attics and roofs or basement
I
storage.
find that's the most fun
You
thing
just
to do. In a
wandered
theater.
around because I had time.
Yeah, why not?
You know, these old buildings in Europe.
That's
But
amazing.
anyway, so that was sort of the trajectory.
Amazing. So, a question that I have for you guys: what was the transition like from going from ballet dancer, dancing in beautiful theaters, to teacher? Was there overlap? Was there something that you did in the meantime for pedagogy, learning how to teach? Or did you guys just end your career and then you were like, okay, teaching is the next thing?
Well, there's two different answers.
Yeah.
Because we had different
Very
trajectories
different
with that.
Yeah, we did. Well, I guess I'll go first.
Yes. They don't want to hear me.
I started to teach when I was 18.
Okay.
People asked me to teach in my church. So I charged 50p for a class. It's just like, you know, maybe 75 cents. And my sister played the piano and she was horrible, so I fired her pretty quick. And then I taught these 4 or 5-year-olds, which I had no clue how to do. So I really feel sorry for those children because it probably was a terrible experience. 2 little redhead twins who came and they were just crazy, and I was not used to children. So that was kind of that's how I first taught. I was very lucky when I went to the London Studio Centre. I actually did all my Royal Academy of Dancing exams. So I took my elementary, my intermediate, and my advanced in like 3 years, which is like crazy to do, but I did. And you really, with these exams, and I'd taken the other exam when I was younger, so you have to study. I had to learn how to write the French words like plié, bar, everything. You know, so I know how to write things. I also know what they mean. Dessous, dessous, all that kind of stuff that you really don't know unless you see it written and learn it. And then I had to do these exams. I think that really, really helped me understand more the teaching. And then when I went to my first company in Germany, I just turned 19. Somehow I was teaching in the school there. The director said, "Do you want to teach?" I'm like, "Sure." And so I had to teach in German, and I spoke no German. But I really loved that, and I had a
Fortunately,
pianist.
ballet, you just have to speak French.
Yeah. Well, no, biegen, strecken, Kinder. You know, and
I'm going to have a great time trying to spell that in subtitles. Just
oh yeah.
Look up bend and stretch in
Yeah,
German.
bend and stretch.
bend and stretch.
It's
Got it.
plié and stretch, biegen, strecken. But I loved it, and the kids loved me, and I got to choreograph because, of course, they would do little recitals, which I seemed to enjoy. So that's also, I also choreographed when I was 11. I forgot that in my first school. And I won a prize. So I was also given an opportunity to feel a little bit more broader as a dancer. So I've been teaching my entire life since I was 18, and I've been actually choreographing since I was 11. I come to think about it. And every time I would go to different ballet companies, somehow I would either choreograph or teach or both. And so it just seemed second nature, like when I was a pastry chef. Here I am making pastries, and someone comes up to me and says, I heard you were a dancer. I'm like, oh yeah. And they're like, well, can you teach this latchkey kid in St. Paul program? Like, okay, well, I could do pizza for 6 weeks, making bread and pizza, and then I could do 6 weeks ballet and jazz. Okay, fine. You know, and it just kind of, I always taught. I've always taught, haven't I? It's like followed me. Like I even went to Normandale, and I was doing art, and I was in the art class. I'm 30 years old, and the art teacher comes to me, oh, you'll make a great teacher. Because all the students would come around me, and they're like, but I don't want to be a teacher, I'm already a teacher. So I don't know, maybe there was, I don't know, I really enjoy helping people. And I really love to choreograph and to create. I love to create, and I love to see other people create too. So, I don't know, for me, I've always had, I've not just purely been a dancer. I feel I'm much more multifaceted. Sorry.
I guess that makes me singularly faceted. No, I did not teach while I was dancing or choreograph. I had opportunities to, but when I was a professional dancer, that was my focus, and it never came up. No, I mean, I think I taught one class once. I mean, it was just it wasn't a thing. I was focused on dancing and training. I think because I'd started later, I really had to just always keep focusing until the day I retired. My class, my training, I always felt my ballet class in the morning, that was my gift to myself. That was for me, that was so I could express myself and learn and grow, excuse me, rather than choreography or doing something. So all my professional career, they had young choreographers in each of the companies I was in Europe. Yep. And Denise choreographed every time, and I did all the dancing, but I didn't choreograph. I just didn't, it didn't come up till later. And it was after I retired, and actually even further after, I started just teaching once a week, teaching twice a week, once a week, and I kept it even after I went back to school, got my undergrad, went to law school, got my law degree, became a lawyer. I still taught, but just a little bit. I always kept my hand in it, and then it just started to enjoy that aspect. It's like I'm passing on this gift that I had, and just on a little basis. And it was years later. I was a lawyer for 15 years practicing in Minneapolis, and we opened Ballet Royale, and it was about 8 or 9 months later, I just quit. I retired again. And I went back, and then I started really teaching, and then I started choreographing and working, and just developed this whole other aspect.
Would you say that you learned that skill on your own? Like, did that come naturally to you?
Choreography or the...
Both. Choreography, teaching, working with young students.
Well, I'd had so many classes. I mean, the teaching, I never took dance training or teacher's training course. I didn't study the pedagogy. I don't know dessous and dessous properly, because there are words that hardly anyone actually uses, and I always mix them up anyway. So I just say over and under. I just switch to English because I get confused by that. Yeah. So dancers, some things you don't actually have to know to be a professional.
Well, I think
as long as you know what they're saying.
I think that's funny, because the thing I remember about you the most is the in-depth explanation of what a move actually means, and why it means that, and the history behind it, and who said it first.
Some things I do know. I just don't know some of those words. But see, I learned that through experience. You know, just growing up and taking many classes. I've had good teachers, strong teachers, teachers that taught different things, and I basically evolved my own teaching schedule at Ballet Royale, we have a comprehensive curriculum and a syllabus that Denise has developed, and with the input of other teachers, and we came up with, okay, this is the targets for this level, and so I was more not directly, well, I was involved, but I wasn't the one that was putting it all together, because I didn't have that background, and I don't have the background to teach little kids. So I tend to not. I would teach the little boys, the 5, 6, 7-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and do little boys classes. But I have an idea, and I have taught the lower levels, but that's not my primary, because I don't have the background. I never grew up as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old taking that level.
Right.
So it's in my body, and I remember doing it, and I can translate it to teaching.
Right.
So I do tend to focus on the upper levels. But that, and choreography, I was quick at picking up choreography. That was one of my strengths, was I would learn things fast and retain it. So I was the one they would throw in, like that night, I'm going to perform something, and I would learn it the day, and then they'd remind me in the wings. It's like, okay, this next section, you remember you go over by those 4 people and you're going to do this combination. I'm like, got it. And so I just go do it.
How impromptu.
But that was a strength I had. So our dancers now, they'd be like, Rick doesn't remember things from one day to the next that he's choreographed. It's like, once I've choreographed it, now you guys have to remember it, because I forget it. And if you're not doing it, it's very different.
Oh, it's very different. It doesn't get into your body.
And nowadays, of course, people glance at a video and they're like, they do it. And I look at the video and I go 8 counts, and then I forget. After 3 counts, I have to go back and look again and again. It's just not something
I find that's not how I learn. I have to do it. A lot of dancers are that way.
And I think, anyway, that was, so this all came more organically, and just through years and years of doing it myself, working with different choreographers. I worked with, Chu Sang-go is a very renowned choreographer in Washington Ballet, and he choreographed for ABT and Paris, all over the world. And so I worked directly with choreographers, good and less good. And you just kind of learn, and then just my own ideas, my own expression, and that sort of blossomed later.
Do you guys think the having a variety of choreographers, teachers to work under is a positive thing? Or do you think focusing in on a single teacher or a single choreographer learning the ins and outs in depth is more of an important thing?
I think in a perfect world, you have a main ballet master or mistress for the company who might teach a couple of times a week, and then you have someone else, plus a physical therapist and other things to support, and then you have that person set ballets, and then in companies, our wish list is, I think having different choreographers coming in is great, because you do have the choreographer, if they're allowed, can pick the dancers that suit their style. So I think it gives the dancers more different opportunities. You might get a dancer who usually isn't in a role suddenly having a role.
Right.
And I think that's a very beautiful thing. The reality in some companies, it's just not possible, because money, that's kind of where it is. Also for us, I know when we see other people choreograph, it's very inspiring. Well, I'm speaking for you, but for me it's very inspiring. I love seeing good choreography. It's a gift, it's exciting, it's beautiful. And that is something that nowadays we are allowed to have more. If we can see, you can go online and see something that you couldn't see in person, or you don't have the opportunity to work with that choreographer. But I do think a main teacher is a good idea, but I think the company also need different input. I do think a lot of companies, they just give class, and I know with us, you still need to train. You still need to be learning in your ballet company. You can't just do it as a warm-up. You should be taking your technique seriously, and really, guiding your body so it's preparing for the day of rehearsal.
Right. And one of the things I learned under you guys is the importance of safety while you're doing things, understanding what your body is doing, and making sure that you are doing that for the safety's sake. And ballet is, in general, designed to keep your body safe while moving in these extreme ways. And understanding that was very, very important. We're not just turning out because cool. We're turning out for a reason.
And cool. And you don't actually have to turn out.
Ballet's cool. I think ballet's cool. I've always thought it was cool.
I tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
And you know, to your original, when you're a dancer, I think being exposed to different choreographers is an absolute benefit.
Yeah.
Because if you just at different stages, it doesn't mean you can't have a main choreographer or people who do most of the choreography, but just through your career, having that exposure and being different styles and training. Because if you're only learning one style, you tend to be less versatile.
Right.
So you go off into the world, and I said, well, I've trained under this specific syllabus, this teacher, you know, whatever it is, if it's Vaganova only or Balanchine only, and you've especially if it's a stylized, you know, that doesn't translate to the classical genre, then you try to move in a different way, and it's completely foreign.
Right.
And that's why even taking contemporary or modern classes or jazz, especially the classic, you know, musical theater style, where you're really focused on isolation and it helps you learn to move in different ways. And I think you also, because the choreography is rarely ever going to be just purely classical, unless they're staging a piece that pre-exists and you're just doing that. But that's going to be I suppose some companies do that still, but almost every company, you're going to do neoclassical. You're going to do classical, you're going to do neoclassical, modern, contemporary, ballet, even if it's...
Right.
So I think you need that breadth and that training. In the younger ages, I think to keep focused on one style to really build that muscle memory and develop that foundation. Switch around too much and that can screw up the little kids.
I was talking to a teacher, I believe she's the director of the school. I don't remember exactly her title, but she was with Ballet Met. And she hesitated to even judge the contemporary at one of the competitions that I was at because she doesn't see neoclassical as something that even students should be doing on their bodies at that time because they don't have the technique to back it up. She exclaimed while we were eating lunch, she says, I don't know if they're intending to be parallel or intending to be turned out. I don't know what they are doing with their technique in these solos because I don't know any of them. And I think that the importance of the understanding the ballet at the base, going into neoclassical, going into contemporary or modern, as it used to be known, the importance of that really needs to be emphasized in teaching nowadays because these students are getting younger and younger. And I'm seeing 10-year-olds on stage doing things that professionals wouldn't do 30 years ago, which is kind of crazy to me.
Their bodies they're like very flexible still too. The little kids are like Gumbies. They just all fold over backwards and they'll do aerials and walkovers.
Which I wouldn't consider neoclassical.
No, it's not. It's contemporary or gymnastics.
Acro. It's an acro solo.
I think as well you bring up a point, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds about, like competitions, especially young dancers. But, if you're 10 years old or 11 and you're doing a variation from a classical ballet that a principal dancer would do, like, say, Giselle, where are you going to go from there?
Right.
Because when you get into a company, guess what? You got to. There's a hierarchy in a company.
Right. You're not going to be dancing Giselle.
No, and I think it sometimes they also don't understand if you haven't had your heart broken, if you haven't had an experience of love or dating, and you're 10, you're not.
We hope they're not.
How are you going to do Death of Nikia without understanding the bass behind it?
Yeah, and I think that's where sometimes I feel it waters the classical ballet history down.
Right.
Because one of the beautiful things when I learnt variations when I was in London, I had Belinda Wright teach it to me. I did Giselle and Aurora, and I was 17. She had done that and performed it with the Royal Ballet of London Festival Ballet. And so I was getting it right. She told me, like, there's a part in Aurora where she goes, it's Act 3, and the arms come up and the head goes with it, and it opens, and it's gorgeous. And Belinda Wright told me it was all about Aurora telling everyone how when she was a little girl, then she became a teenager, then she grew up, and now she's a woman and going to get married. And to understand those, I think, is really important.
And it could be a lot of times with YouTube, you see a lot more of these behind-the-scene coaching, which I think is fantastic, because it does enable those who are trying to capture the original essence of some of these classic roles to know the interpretation. Because I think what happens is they watch a video, they're going to do YGP or something, and they see another person doing it. They don't know why they're doing it. They're just copying the choreography. And I think as it goes from year to year to year, you get further and further away from anyone who's actually done it and learned it on that professional level, passing it on. And it becomes, I learned it from my teacher who actually never learned it or wasn't even a professional dancer, and you get to be generations removed. Doesn't mean they're not getting good training, doesn't mean people aren't learning things, but when you're trying to pass along that information, I think that's the issue.
There's a distinct lack of understanding of the origins of ballet, the history. Again, another teacher was talking about La Bayadere, where all the hand movements are gesturing upwards. When you're doing just a variation from it for a competition, you don't get that they are literally gesturing to God or gesturing to the universe. Like they have a reason for every hand movement. And I love that when you were teaching me, you were saying, okay, this is what you're saying. I want you to do you want to dance with me? You're telling me the actual nomenclature, the things that you're saying, so that we're having a conversation. And it reads that way to the audience versus when a kid's doing a variation and they're in the middle of Coppelia and they're asking, come out and play with me. Oh, she's not answering. Like, you're gesturing to a doll in the balcony of a house. You're not gesturing to some rando off stage. It's I think an important thing for storytelling, for acting, and at the core, that's what ballet is. It's acting.
And I think that's where, in our ballet company, we do classical story ballets. And it's so important because even if they're not the traditional story ballet, we usually write them and tweak them, there is that mime that is in there. So we are passing it down because usually the mime is, any variation is to other people on stage. So when you take a variation out of that, you're missing all the elements of everybody around you. And it's really good for the children and for dancers to have that experience of performing in a company, in a ballet, where it's a beautiful camaraderie where you practice with, you have a professional, you have a student on stage together, they see the professional, but they also, can dance as a little kid. It's appropriate, and I think that's really, really important. And I think that's also, if you want to become a professional ballet dancer, you need to have that experience to understand what it is like to then be, if you want to become a professional, in a professional, as a profession, sorry. If you don't have that experience, you could have a very rude awakening. Plus you miss the beauty of that and the understanding of this art form. It's an art form, it's meant to be shown, it's not a sport,
Well, speaking of dancers transitioning to a company, what is being looked for? Because I get a lot of students ask me, okay, which summer intensive should I go to? Should I wear my hair this way? Should I wear this leotard? Should I be, presenting myself in a certain way? What are the companies looking for? What are different companies looking for around the US or around the world? So specifically for you guys, what are you looking for in the transition from a student to, say, an apprentice or a company member with Twin Cities Ballet?
You want to take this one?
I think it's not just Twin Cities Ballet. I think when we're looking at a dancer and you look for certain attributes that students have, and it's really the same. I think some of the questions with, how do I present at audition? What are they looking for? Or what are we looking for as a dancer that you're working with from a student? And it's the same. Obviously, technique is huge. You have to have the proper training. I always tell people there's quality, personality, and musicality. The quality of your movement, the technique, the strength, the training, but we want to see a personality. And we want to see musicality, because you could have legs up to here, everybody does 4 pirouettes, you can do everything and be dead. And sometimes we describe it as having heart.
I was going to say heart.
It's the expression of your inner emotions through the movement. You're doing it for a purpose. Maybe you're expressing joy, maybe you're expressing boredom, maybe you're expressing anger, doesn't matter, it changes. But we look, when we see a student, and we'll cast students in certain roles, and if they have acting, because even if in a contemporary movement, you still are expressing something. And if you're balanced, you don't move. You're balancing and you're growing, and there's a stretch and an energy, and you're alive the whole time. But we want to see personality. We tell people in an audition, well, especially the kids, if they're professionals, we don't usually give them that level of coaching, but we want to see you. So how do you stand out? You stand out by having a personality.
Letting your
not
personality
being dead.
through that
Be,
death.
and I'll say, okay, there's, Sarah. I want to see more Sarah. I just need to see that, because if you're not expressing that love of dance, that joy, sometimes you look and you wonder why they're doing it, because they look like they hate it. They're just this sort of dead, and they're doing it, and they have all the physical facilities. They're not always the best dancers, because they're not expressive. You do a bunch of pirouettes. Wow, that was great. Then you do it again and again. After a while, it's like, well, okay, they can do a bunch of pirouettes, but you're looking for the transition. You're looking for the expression, the musicality, the dynamics. Hit a balance, pull yourself out, just go boom, and stay for a while and come down. So, as a student, we try to encourage that, and that's what we look for. Those are the dancers that are going to go on. Sometimes they're not the ones with the highest legs or the most pirouettes or the best jumps. It's that broad incorporation of the artistry, the expression, the joy of dance with the technique. I'm not downplaying technique at all.
Of course.
That's the fundamental. We need to see that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people with good technique.
Well, I would argue that more people can achieve the technique than they can achieve the artistry behind it. The acting is hard. It really is. It's one of those things that does not come naturally to every dancer. And I've seen, especially in some of my students that are more outgoing, when they're acting, they're just scared. And I think a lot of that fear of being rejected from a company takes away some of the joy that they do have for the art in the first place.
I think, I remember being told that as a dancer, and I didn't always understand what it meant. Luckily, I personally my strength was acting. So I could bring my personality, because I didn't have the high legs. I had nice feet, but I didn't have
nice.
high extension.
It's an understatement.
But it's, what does that mean? And I think, Rick, what does it mean to show heart, to show your personality? Because I think that's where some dancers get stuck. You can tell me that, be you. What does that mean? it is the way you personally phrase things. It's like if you feel like you want to pull your musicality, you do a ton levé and a coupé and a soutenu, you bring breath in your work, and you go down and through and you hold things, and then you have to go in your head and feel the joy.
Right.
Feel why you started this. Feel more like a child in some ways, because I think the children have more joy. And I think you train every day, and it's technique, 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 technique. And it's hard every day but it's actually easier if you bring the breath when you study, when you are, it brings. When you breathe, your muscles work better, and you can get higher out of your legs, and then use the correct muscles.
Right.
So it's a good thing.
Well, and I think dancers often take auditions too seriously. I mean, yes, I'm assuming when a dancer is auditioning for you, you are being critical. You're looking at technique, you're looking at turnout, you're looking at their physical ability, but you're also wanting to see who are you as a dancer.
We look if they fit in too.
Yeah, and that's
If they come in and a dancer straight away is smiling and other people are smiling, we're like, oh great.
And there's different cultures with different companies. I'm speaking more on a general overall, because there will be specific companies looking for certain
Ballet
things.
West
And,
likes people tall.
and what we look for might be something but different from someone else.
Yeah.
But I really think that it's those, and maybe it's too vague to say, be yourself. But that's what we look for with the students. That's the potential to become a dancer, not just to do dance and take ballet and even succeed and do, and be a fabulous dancer, but to become a dancer, a professional dancer. We look for that. We look for that personality, that quality, the musicality, something, and some of it is intrinsic. Some people just automatically, even little kids, they just have that quality of movement, the port de bras, and some are like, you gotta, but you can bring it out. You can train for that. Whether you felt it organically or they said, now open to the audience and turn, you just tell them, and sometimes they'll get it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just has to be worked at, and sometimes but it's in there somewhere. But that's really, other than just technique, and as you say, sometimes it's height, sometimes it's, we need a tall person, a short person. I didn't get a job once. I went in, I was like, this is fantastic. I'm like one of the taller people here. And I'm 5'9". I'm not really tall or short. I mean, it's got that middle range. And they said, we have this one dancer, we just hired this soloist, and she's really tall. We need a guy who's over 6 feet. And it's like, great. It was that one moment with that one company.
Right.
The year before, probably would have gotten a job in that company. So it doesn't matter. It just depends sometimes on what we just happen to need in the moment for that season.
I think that's something that dancers often don't know, is that they're not just hiring one type of dancer. It's not just about technique. It's, all right, I'm sorry, we have too many blondes in this company. We need a brunette for a character. Or like we have really tall girls. We need a tall male.
I mean, the height, I think, more the hair color, we don't really worry about.
Exactly.
Maybe some do, but that's, I think there's individual needs for individual companies.
I also think, yes, a smaller company like ours has a very, very different need than a big company. We don't have the luxury of having, many dancers. So our main dancers have to be more principal level. They have to be able to do a lot of different roles. And that's a lot. We ask a lot.
Right.
But then you get many, many more opportunities. You're not standing in the back. Even if you're an apprentice with us, you will dance. You won't spend a year just walking across the stage carrying a torch.
Or just understudy. And that's a difference too.
Well, that's something to be valued as well. Understanding that understudy roles, you're still learning.
Yes, very much so.
And one last thing on the technique versus artistry. When people are auditioning, they tend to hyper focus on their technique.
Right.
And it's like, I hopped out of that turn. They must not like me. Dancers need to understand that we look at the whole dance.
Right.
If you hop one, or if you nailed a perfect 4 pirouette boom, you don't just get the job.
No.
Because that's fantastic that you did that. And the dancer, as a dancer, you're like, yeah, nailed it. Mm-hmm. I did great. But really, we've had people, you slip and fall. It doesn't mean you don't lose because of that. It's not a scored point system where we just deducted you down because you hopped. So we do look at the broad overall quality of movement through the whole class.
Right.
Yeah.
And you
If
can have an
somebody's over there
off-turning day.
grouching, or if they turn and start talking during the middle of audition when the teacher's
Yes.
giving the audition. I mean, there's some pretty obvious things that you
Don't
would
do
think
that.
nobody would ever do that sometimes they do.
Yes.
And so
Also-
people need to know, when you talk about going in, how do you look, present yourself as someone who cares
Yes.
that you're there.
Yeah.
Have your hair neat and tidy. Wear something that's tight. You don't have to come in a little dress. I mean, look professional, and that means don't look like a slob. Don't hang around like look attentive. I had a teacher once, I was actually talking about Amanda McCarroll, who went on to become a principal with ABT, but she was at Washington Ballet when I was there. And he said, it's great as a teacher, because you're giving something and you look over and there's Amanda with just this intelligent look on her face.
Yes.
Just soaking in every single word that every single teacher does. Whether it's in a class or choreographer, there's just a focus and a respect. Because to turn your back and do something else while a teacher's giving a correction is disrespectful.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not somebody I want, because if they're doing that in an audition, red flags, red flags, red flags.
Right.
It's important that you behave, and you don't have to be all prim and proper. We love it if people come in and people say something, everybody laughs. At least we do, or at least I do. I like humor, and I like to have fun. This should be fun.
Yeah.
And that's part of the personality. If somebody's all like, no, I got that, they seem too uptight. That maybe isn't the right fit for our company. But so there's a little of that, but I think show the respect to your teacher, to the institution of ballet,
Right.
to the company, to the professionalism. If you want to be a professional dancer, walk in the door and look like a professional dancer, act like a professional dancer.
And know the company, know what the company is, their rep, understand them. Don't just send blanket emails either. We always know when we get an email from a dancer who's done no homework, they just send us stuff with nothing. And you don't have to write a lot, but
sometimes
you need to
we
say
mean
the directors.
we mean nothing.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they just say, "Dear director," and it's so generic. They've sent out a
37
feeder.
emails
Yeah.
to different companies.
We literally get emails that don't even say, "Hello, I'm interested in your company."
And then-
Generic.
We're not
It's just a
really
link.
interested.
It's just a name and a link.
Right.
And,
Because we don't
and
have
guess how much
time.
attention we pay to the person who spent zero attention.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we'll just take a peek to see who the heck that was, but generally because they haven't bothered, we're not going to bother with
I
that
do
person.
think
That's a pretty much.
Intelligence is really important too. You come into an audition, don't be frightened if you don't know the step or the choreography, or you need clarification, ask questions. We always do an interview at the end. We always talk to everyone. And that's really important too, to ask questions.
Yeah.
It's really important, we feel as well, because we're so small, that you actually physically have to come here, because then we know you're serious.
Right.
That tells us if you walk in our doors and you've booked a flight and you're here, we really will honor that, and
Right.
we'll make sure we give you the time, because we know that's hard for a dancer. But it's also important that you know what you're coming into. So,
And I think that's one of the things we look for too, is sometimes we'll give a correction in an audition. We want to see how they react.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll give something that I know most dancers haven't done, even professionals, and they're like, whoa, and I'm going to say, and they struggle with something, and I'll say, here's a trick, or here's a hint, or advice. Think of doing this, and then you watch, and how many of them have picked it up on it and fixed it.
Right.
Just just little peeks into how they work, how they take a correction is huge, because yes, for all levels, but especially in a smaller company, you're going to be working with that person very closely, and you want somebody that's responsive,
Right.
And that you can work with.
Definitely.
If they resist, that's going to be a problem going forward. So again, red flags. If you're not open to adapting in an audition, what are you going to do when it's choreography? It doesn't just suddenly magically appear and you're a different person.
Definitely.
So just be aware of that adaptability.
Adaptability is important. And I think that understanding the company that you're stepping into is really important as well. What style are they primarily teaching in? How can you best fit that style and practice that? Okay, you want to be a Balanchine dancer? Study Balanchine. Actually go do the work before you're stepping into an audition trying to copy everyone else with their nice Balanchine claw. It's a process.
He said it.
It's true. It's a claw. It's a claw. So yeah, I appreciate you guys sitting down with me. You answered a lot of my questions without me having to actually read them, which is fantastic. You guys have some shows coming up. Where can they find you guys, and where can they buy tickets for the shows?
Yeah, I'll let you do better at this.
TwinCitiesBallet.org. We do a mixture of classical, neoclassical, story ballets. Our next main stage performance, we do a full-length original rock ballet to Pink Floyd's The Wall, with live music right on stage. There's big platforms built up. The band is right up on top of the stage. So it's a full-length original work. It's very exciting. People love it. Some of the best feedback we've had are from diehard Pink Floyd fans who've never seen a ballet in their life. It's like, I never imagined it could be like this. It really goes to the heart of the original music without all the lasers and videos, and it's not a rock show. It's a rock ballet. Then in May we do it's called Coppelia in Paris, and it's a spin on the Coppelia ballet. It's set in the 1920s Paris on a ballet company that's staging the ballet Coppelia. So it switches back and forth between a dress rehearsal of Coppelia that's purely traditional Coppelia, and then it goes to real life where the actual dancers are interacting with each other, who very much mirror the storyline of Coppelia. So the Franz and Swanhilde, Francois and Sylvia, and they're sort of having their heads butting, but it's a fun take on it. There's no actual doll.
No.
That like, blasphemy. But we have, it's sort of a diva that comes in and she's a guest and she's sort of very egotistical, and then the Swanhilde character is trying to talk to her. And we'll do a lot of the same exact choreography, but then you can have somebody react.
Right.
And it just adds a little bit of fun. So we'll do that, and that's coming up in May. So we've got those two are our next major things.
Awesome. And where can they find you on social media?
We're Instagram, so it's Twin Cities Ballet.
Is it MN? Twin Cities Ballet?
Twin Cities Ballet, MN.
MN, Minnesota.
Instagram.
I will link it in the description.
Yeah, thank you.
As well as their school, Ballet Royale of Minnesota. Absolutely love talking to you guys. Thank you for inviting me back in, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yeah,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you for watching the first episode of the Dance World podcast. I'm going to get better at this, I promise. It's going to be a process, but I'm going to get better. That's key. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and comment what your thoughts are on the subjects that we talked about. And if you have any suggestions, you can feel free to leave them in the comments, or you can email me at thedanceworldpodcast@gmail.com, and I will try to read all your suggestions. Thank you very much, guys. Have a wonderful day.